headlines during the week. So we are going to start with President Bola Tinubu, who was supposed to depart Abuja on Saturday to participate in the 2025 edition of Abu Dhabi Sustainability Week, ADSW 2025. According to a release issued on Friday by presidential spokesperson Bayo Onanuga, President Tinubu will be attending the summit. Also, Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde approved the appointment of Prince Abimbola Obuade as the new Alaafin of Oyo. The announcement was made in a statement on Friday by the Commissioner for Information and Orientation, Dotun Oyelade. Also, the national grid suffered its first major collapse in 2025, barely 10 days into the new year, leaving many parts of the country in a nationwide blackout. This incident marks the 13th collapse in the last 13 months. It was sort of confirmed in a post by Energy Podcast saying that the national grid suffers major collapse. Although from TCN, it seems they have a different story to tell. Also, the federal government reiterated its opposition to the use of foreign mercenaries in tackling its security challenges, saying it will not provide adequate panacea to the problems. The federal government also indicated an interest in working with China in domesticating the production of military equipment to avoid the necessary delays in relying on foreign countries to procure such equipment. Also, security guards at the National Institute of Public Information in Kaduna escaped death by whiskers on early morning of Friday when their criminals tied them up to carry out vandalism of transformer in the institute compound. Reports from the area alleged that the criminals, whose numbers cannot be ascertained, entered the premises in the wee hours of Friday and removed the transformer cables before the calibrated it and went away unchallenged. Details of these and more get to our attention today. It is indeed my pleasure to welcome you to today's episode of Firecrackers. My name is Iribami Salako. We have on standby Yinka Odusoya, a security expert who is joining us live from US. Good evening and thank you so much for joining us at this time.
Well, good evening.
All right, we also have Emmanuel Ekole, he's Executive Director, Elixir Trust Foundation. Thank you too for joining us at this time.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, all right. So let's quickly take this break. That is on federal government rejects foreign mercenary while still planning to work with China. And when we return, we will begin discussions on tackling insecurity in Nigeria. Stay with us.
The Chinese minister and his Nigerian counterpart Yusuf Tugar addressed the media after the meeting to solidify Chinese relationship with the federal government of Nigeria. There, Ambassador Tugar told journalists that private military companies, no matter where they are coming from, are not the solution to tackling the country's security challenges. According to him, Nigeria has consistently proved effective in leading other countries in the African region in addressing challenges of peace and security. That, he said, Nigeria did whenever she partners with other countries and have their support, including major powers that are outside of the region.
In leading other countries in our region, and I would even say on the continent at large, in addressing challenges to peace and security. And we do this whenever we partner with other countries and have their support, including major powers that are outside of our region, outside of Africa.
While welcoming the Chinese Minister of Foreign Affairs, Tugar said that the visit was building on the gains of the Forum on China-Africa Cooperation FOCAC that took place in 2024, and importantly, President Bola Tinubu's state visit to China, which was judged by all to be very successful. He said the discussion with President Tinubu centered on mutual interest, economic, political interest, and the Memoranda of Understanding (MOUs) that were signed in numerous areas: energy, communication, agriculture, finance, transportation, infrastructure, and petrochemicals. Also speaking, the Chinese Minister of Foreign Affairs Wang Yi said the strategic planning of President Xi Jinping and President Tinubu, China-Nigeria relations have achieved three major outcomes of achieving a new leap in the characterizations of the relations, with their two presidents jointly announced the elevation of China-Nigeria relations to a comprehensive strategic partnership, among others. Fielding questions on the proposed currency swap agreement with China, the minister said it showed how well the country has carried out a financial cooperation and sustained its momentum.
Indeed, as you mentioned, the renewal of the currency swap agreement shows how well we have carried out our financial cooperation and sustained its momentum. As with regard to Nigeria's wish to increase the line of the currency swap, we will favorably study and consider the issue.
The two-day official visit of the Chinese envoy ended on Thursday.
Many thanks for staying with us. If you are just joining us, this is Firecrackers and we're just about to get started. So the first topic we have at hand today is tackling insecurity in northern Nigeria. Insecurity in northern Nigeria is something that has been going on for over a decade, way over a decade, but the ones that has really caught people's attention, especially when it comes to the ones of terrorism, like for Boko Haram, for example. Now, that's been going on for over 10 years in northern Nigeria, and recently Nigeria lost soldiers, about 6 soldiers, to still this fight against insecurity, and this is happening one too many. A fight for 10 years, for over 10 years actually. If we are still battling with it, is something that we truly need to talk about. And then we have the federal government too. When the Chinese foreign minister came to Nigeria, they said that Nigeria is not welcoming the idea of mercenaries, but rather they want to focus on production of these weapons locally, so that we would not have to be relying on foreigners on supplying us for weapons. So now to talk on this, I first of all like to invite Yinka Okunsoya, who is a security expert. Let us first of all look at the decision that the federal government made in rejecting mercenaries to help us in the fight against terrorism and insecurity in Nigeria. Do you think that is the best line of action to take at this time?
From my point of view, I do think that's the best decision the government can make. When it comes to internal security, you don't want to give the blueprint to external factors. You know, if we're dealing with a joint operation outside the shores of Nigeria, I understand we can do collaboration and training. We can do collaboration in also limited planning. But to bring mercenaries, I think that's going to evolve to a lot of other security risks that we don't plan for. Let me take a quick step back. There's nothing wrong with China coming to Nigeria to help, but sometimes it's like you want to hire somebody, right? You want to see the resume. How many wars has China fought in the recent times, or how much experience do they have in this kind of war we're talking about? We're talking about guerrilla war. We're talking of insurgency, which is not a regular one-dimension type of war that they fought in the 50s in the Korean War. I mean, if memory can serve me right, that will be the most current. I mean, that was the last time China actually went to war to acquire some experience. Just like any other job, you have to have some experience on ground. So I think we can partner with them limitedly in production, which Nigerians have to be in charge, because we know they're antecedent when it comes to business production. They like to own and control everything. So it just depends on who is negotiating on behalf of Nigeria. Just like every Western country does, you must have Nigeria's interest at heart first, and Nigeria's interest must be protected.
Thank you so much for that. And now to Emmanuel Ifole, how do you see the step taken by the Nigerian government when it comes to tackling insecurity, especially in northern Nigeria, because that seems to be the place where insecurity is really eating hard at the moment? If you are to analyze the steps that the federal government has taken so far, how would you rate it?
I will say it's a step in the right direction concerning production and partnership for production. But at the same time, for some of us, we are also thinking at looking really at the political will of those in power. Do we have ammunitions on ground? Because if you look at the report of the last administration from 2015 to 2023, the military only in Nigeria had about 700 new armories and all that's been gotten. If you look at also about 38 aircraft were bought, and then 36 new ones were ordered. You also look about the Navy having about 400 new boats being purchased, and amongst all that was just what was contributed or added to what we already have. The question is, have we been even able to use that for our own security? So if you are looking at production, we're looking at the ones we have we been able to use it? And even if they are going to produce new ones, what is the tendency and what is the percentage that we're even going to use it? So even though I will actually agree of not really working with mercenaries at this time, but because of the failures of our security or law enforcement agencies, and because of their unwillingness and the lack of also accountability on their part, I will actually encourage, even if it's for short term, let us allow mercenaries to come and work, because we have always been hearing issues of these are my brothers, I cannot go and kill my brothers, and people that have tried to even do that, fellow soldiers or fellow law enforcement personnel have tried to also kill them. These have come from reports of certain persons that resigned from the military and other persons in the service. But if you are getting mercenaries, they are not looking whether you are my brother or from the same religion. They'll do what is being assigned to them. So for me, maybe it can be a short term, but in Nigeria, if we really want to address these concerns, because the government on this part have not shown they have arrested any criminals, neither have they punished any. The few Boko Haram they have arrested, they are freed also. So for me, we need something like that, even if it's a short term, and then on the long run, the productions will also be useful. At the same time, the contribution also being made that China, if you are looking at the resume, what can they add? For me, I was actually looking at maybe Israel. Maybe would have been better, since they have been consistent in the fight against different oppositions and all that. And China, we have already been engaged in a lot of businesses. When you get familiar too much, our international policy, I don't know how well it is, but when you keep having one person like in all sectors, being part and parcel of all sectors, there it gets to a particular point that you don't have anything again to hide. There's no secret in that country at all, and that is not too good for a sovereign nation like ours.
Much for that. But when it comes to invitation of mercenaries to help in Nigeria, it seems we are already having problems with some countries that border us. Let us use Niger now, for example, that there were fears initially that France is trying to set up a military base here in Nigeria. So if we are to, let's say, consider having mercenaries fight, would that not perhaps be sending wrong messages to countries who border us? We might be worried about their own security, because they are also tackling some forms of insecurity too over there.
Okay.
I will say that if you look at just a few weeks back, there were attacks on a military base or a military checkpoint in Cameroon from terrorists coming through Taraba State to actually attack that particular base. These areas, we have barracks in different states along these areas. Not that they are not aware of these persons. And if you also look at the situation in our country since 2015 or even before then, the federal government of Nigeria has been collecting data of even calls or whatever from everybody in the country. As long as you make calls, as long as you do whatever online, the federal government has that because they are paying billions yearly to be able to get such data. And if they have not been able to use that, make good use of that in addressing security concerns, we are spending trillions yearly on budgetary allocations. Let's not forget that recently the government also signed about $20,000 to retired military, senior military officers for medical tourism. For reward for what? Because they have not been able to address anything. So it shouldn't be consistent that every time we just spend money without accountability. So for me, it's a sign that really it will also encourage our military officers for them to wake up because they have been sleeping a lot. They are getting money without accounting for anything, and there have also not been any audit of the military as far as recently as I can remember. So as long as there's no accountability, and instead the military are also being able to unable to even handle simple equipment like drones and all that, and have led to the death of a lot of persons. So we're not looking at just the capacity of productions, we're also looking at the capacity of interventions in the field. They have not given us that result. So based on what we have seen against the number of years and the number of monies we have given to them, why don't we audit them? And during that process, we can also do a long-term production, partnership with production, but at the same time, we need urgent interventions in a lot of areas. What's the cost of food crops now? It's hiking because of insecurity. Lakurawa in Sokoto, they're already collecting rent from citizens, and even if you farm, you pay them some percentages before you are allowed to harvest your own crops in Nigeria. So the military have not shown, and security agencies have not shown that they want to, not that they cannot handle, they are not willing to. So it's needed that even if it's for short term, mercenaries should come out there and we can give them just the required information for them to work, but I think a short-term intervention can really help us. During 2015, during elections we had,
I would like to correct some thoughts right here because it's getting too long.
Few mercenaries that we also got at that time that was able to clear terrorists that we had back then to enable or make it possible for elections to happen all over the country. But after then till now, we cannot really show that our law enforcement officers have not shown the willingness to be able to address anything.
All right, thank you so much for that. Yinka, it seems you want to contribute to what we are discussing right now, especially when it comes to issues of border.
First, because there's some misconstruction there. You have to walk the walk to be able to talk the talk. I spent 16 years globally, intervention in different countries. So I have the expertise and experience to talk about this subject. One thing you don't want is mercenary in your country. Unless you have been in a multinational coalition fight, you will not understand exactly what the point I'm talking about. You will never give a blueprint. I understand the frustration in Nigeria about failure of the services or failure of producing results. I don't see it as direct failure of this individual branch of the military or security forces. I think it is a collective failure as into the leadership and the intent of leadership. Let us not forget, the military does, or the security forces does, what the political will is. They can just pack up the vehicle and start chasing people around. That does not how it works. There's a logical law and order that they have to follow. They have to follow command. Individual commander has to take command from a higher, and also to make sure it meets the president and the commander's intent. These things are not just black and white. These things are more, there's a lot of more of a legal and international eyes on this particular thing. What we should be focusing on is why is China want to help us with, mercenaries. We have enough soldiers. What we lack is training. We need to train. We need to outsource training to some extent. We have Nigerians all over the world that have been in so many sophisticated Western military and have this operation. Then this is what other countries do. You harness those brain power, bring people in, have an elaborate planning, and then move into action. We cannot say our security forces are not doing what they're supposed to do. They are doing the best based on what they are provided. Will I go into mission, go conduct a mission with what those guys have? Probably not, because I know they are not well equipped. I've seen clips. I have friends in there who are generals and lieutenant colonels. I speak to these guys all the time. I know their frustration. They have the will. They want to go and get this job done. But the thing is there. Do they have the training? Do they have the equipment? Any country that offers to help Nigeria, be it the United States, first thing you have to think about is their national interest. Did the U.S. go into Rwanda when the genocide was going on? Because they have no national will and interest in there. It's all about national interest. No country is going to spend their money to help Nigeria unless they're going to benefit at the end of the day from it. So it is our time to stand up and be counted that enough is enough. We got to fix this. We need to stop depending on external forces, external handout, collaboration is the only thing we need. We have the men and women that are brave. I did an interview about 2 years ago, and I said one of the bravest military in the world is actually Nigeria. If you given the fact these guys go out there knowing that they might not make it back that day. When we step out on a mission, we have a 90% chance that we're going to make it back because of the training and equipment we have, because of the planning and the resources we have. So number one, you're going to have a huge language barrier. How does a Nigerian brigade size element go out there into action with Chinese mercenary and be able to communicate effectively on the battlefield? Somebody will say they use AI, language translator. Every second delay in making decision on the battlefield, a life will be lost. A whole battalion can be wiped out. So it has to be an organic situation that we can handle ourselves. We can do it. I agree with the last speaker on one thing. We can do it. The problem is, do we have the will? Do we have the political will, and do we have the political intent? He referred to the last administration. I boldly said last time that the last administration did not have the will. I said it while President Buhari was in office. It was on this day. There was no political will to get it done. If President Tinubu and the Congress rise up and make this number one priority, because I think it's the number one priority for Nigerians to stamp out this insurgency, because like he alluded to, it's holding us back economically. People cannot basically go do basic farming. That's why the prices are rising. Production and demand is not balanced. So those are some of the issues we have, and some of our people are overly reacting to every situation as Boko Haram. It's not every attack that's Boko Haram. There are copycats out there. I mean, the first thing I said, the template of Boko Haram is easy to defeat because they're basically using the Taliban and Al Qaeda tactics, which there's lessons learned even on the internet to copy from. They're using the same tactics. Number one thing, funding. Where are they getting the money from? Who is funding them? Why is it so hard for us to track the funding? These guys are buying sophisticated weapons. They are having all these vehicles that we can see. They have some Humvees and also some French equipment. How are they getting their hands on this? And these are the so-called Western and Chinese or Eastern world that we want to help us. There's also subtly, like you alluded to in Niger, funding distortion so they can have access to our Commonwealth. I mean, we see what's going on in Niger with Russia. Russia is sending their mercenaries in there, and what they're doing? Taking away uranium free of charge to fund the war in Ukraine. So those are the kind of things we have to be very careful of. You don't open you have to bring it to the macro level. You don't open your house to somebody else to manage the security of your children. You can learn from them. You can buy weapons, equipment from them, but at the same time, you want to be in control of your own destiny. Thank you.
Okay, but still with you. When we're talking about issues of insecurity in Nigeria, some people opine that it is not Nigerians that are perpetrating this evil act, especially when it comes to banditry and terrorism. Some have gone so far to say that there are people coming in from across the border into Nigeria, and then they become tax collectors, so to speak. So would you advise that it might just be best for Nigeria to just close the border between Nigeria and other neighboring countries, or perhaps come up with some other measures that would ensure that our border is not so porous and is not just a walk in, walk out anytime you want type of situation?
Thank you. One of the things you actually hit the nail on the head. One of the measures I've refused back in the days, about 3 years ago, was a total close down of the border, and also strengthen the Border Patrol Agency or recreate the Border Patrol Agency. There is no country with a porous border that can control its security. Yes, it's confirmed. We have foreigners coming in our country and perpetrating most of this evil. And like I said earlier, it's just the same template in Iraq. When we went to Iraq in 2003, there was no resistance. I was part of the invasion task force into Iraq. There was no resistance. Guess what? All these mujahideen came from all over Middle East. Also, he's from Jordan. All these guys came from everywhere because they want martyrdom. I can assure you the same thing is taking place in the northern part of Nigeria. They're flying in from everywhere. In the recent cases, Israel and Lebanon. Most of those fighters are not Lebanese. You can see Hezbollah is having a problem with the Lebanese government right now. People came all the way from Syria, Iran, and stuff like that, because that's what they believe in. So if we're not closing and controlling the border, we're just spinning the wheels. We need to know who comes in and goes out of our country, what equipment flows in and flows out of our country. That border in the northern part sector or northeast is too porous. Yes, it says mountainous. I agree with the speaker. We can use technology to monitor our border, and we can use what we call a roving patrol in that area as well, so that we can know exactly where they're going, the path they're taking. Because think about it, when insurgents are doing an operation, they also have limited resources. They tend to follow a pattern. They tend to follow a pattern and have a habit. So when they have like 2 or 3 entry points into the country, they continue to use it. So why are we not finding those things? Why are we not using the drones to find these guys? We have heat seekers. We have opportunity to close down. That border must be closed down. That is number one, to have anything. You can buy all the weapons you want. You can bring all the Chinese you want. That border has to be closed down. Let me round this particular section up by pointing to what's going on in Ukraine. The Russians brought in the South Koreans, the North Koreans. We saw what happened there. Now the Koreans and the Russians are killing each other. They can't communicate, and the Ukrainians are killing them in droves. Because when you shoot, move, and communicate, it's a constant, living, continuous thing you have to do. You cannot leave it to interpreter. You cannot. That was some of the limitations of the United States military in Afghanistan. We rely heavily on interpreters. How do you know the interpreter is not telling you what he probably wants to do, or a vendetta over somebody? So those are the things we have to be very careful in bringing. What are we going to do? Outsource our police as well? Bring mercenary police into Nigeria? No, Nigeria is a country that can do its own thing. We have 200+ million people in the country. If we have to expand our military and train people, we need to get the right training for them. What I point out is the training is not up to par. The equipment that we're buying, sometimes, from my experience, we're just buying equipment based on what is shining out there. We have to do an intelligence battlefield analysis, see what kind of equipment complements the mission we are about to go on. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And now to Emmanuel Ikole, when it comes to issues of border and people coming in and out of the country and perpetrating this evil act, some people have gone so far as saying that perhaps governments themselves are involved in probably having a share of this illegal tax collection done by these bandits in the areas that you're dominating. Would you agree to this point of view, or perhaps there's still just too much more going on underneath that a lot of people don't understand yet?
Yeah, so when I explained earlier that we lack political will in carrying out certain intervention, it was not just on the part of the political leaders. I was also looking at the angle of law enforcement officers. There are many times that communities have arrested certain persons in communities, and you find out that the military or military personnel are part of it, part of the bandits. At the same different times, you have also found out that police officers are also part of it. And it has also given reason why certain interventions or certain operations in certain regions have not worked, because some of these persons have friends that are part of those groups, those type criminal groups that are causing issues within the country. So it's also one of the reasons. Also, if you look critically at 2015, during the elections, there were already reports that certain persons brought mercenaries within the country, and because this candidate won at the end of the day, those mercenaries were allowed in Nigeria. While we are looking at those stories, an aspect of it can still be true because some of those persons still have come out to give certain information. If another thing, the angle is, when you look also at our borders, just like the last speaker said, it has been porous, and there's need for it to be closed down. I gave an example of one of the terrorist group, Lakurawa, that emerged recently. They have recruited persons in different countries within the region in such a way that if they are being attacked in Cameroon, they run into Nigeria. If they are attacked in Nigeria, they can run into Chad. So there's need for that interagency synergy within the country, and also that country synergy at that level where countries can come together and plan how to address these concerns, especially around those regions. But recently, just like I gave example still of certain persons from a country going to attack security agencies in another country. So if our borders are not being closed down, then these issues will come. But even if the borders are being closed down, another issue is, even when this command is being given, if you look at in the media, consistently the federal government, the president have been reminding security chiefs that they should go out there and address the insecurity issues and all that in the country. What have they addressed? I've been privileged to work in a refugee camp in Nigeria. I've been privileged to work in IDP camps in Nigeria. I've been privileged. In fact, currently I have a staff, and it's one of the retired people that work in the military that have retired and is working with me as my staff. In Nigeria's situation, a lot of things are involved. A lot of persons don't want intervention in certain areas because it affects their tribe. Others because of religion. These are issues that we have failed to address. And outside this issue of, you see, even clerics and all that coming out to defend bandits, and they are not being held to account at no time. Terrorist groups have come out to claim they have been responsible for bombing or causing issues or killing people. None has been arrested in the country. So even if you produce ammunitions, as long as there's no accountability, we still continue to roam around in circle and not address anything. And outside the political will, service chiefs also have to be accountable. And it goes further worse if this current administration have gone further. When we are borrowing money to upgrade our budgetary allocation, we are going further to share $20,000. If you convert that to Nigerian currency, it's about 30-something million into senior officers for medical tourism. Of what use is that? What have they done to merit such a reward? So there's a lot to be done. So that is why I keep repeating that yes, it's not good. We shouldn't wish for external bodies to come and assist. But even the persons who are partnering with, they also have their own interests. They also have their own interests in the country. And if you look at what the China we are talking about currently in our country, they have a lot of companies within Southwest, for example. Many of this, anybody can do a research on this. It's even in the papers, people can do a research on this. They have not shown at any time that they really value the Nigerians they are working with here in Southwest. I'm saying this, anybody can do that research. So, me, I'm looking at the interest, what helps Nigerians better? What should enable also the internally displaced persons to go back to their places that has been taken by criminals, and the military know these places and what have they been doing to drive these people away? The police officers are aware of these areas. What have they been doing to pursue them or drive them away? But monies consistently here on air, these monies have been allocated even to the military. There should be audits. Let them specify, we use this money to purchase this type of equipment. And what's the capacity that they have in handling them? Same military officers have gone for peacekeeping abroad in different places and have done well. What is stopping them from doing the same in their so-called country? It means they don't want. If they wish and they can, what is stopping them from addressing it? A lot of persons are dying and they themselves are killing people without even calling to account their own officers that are murdering citizens within the country. So why can we continue to fold our hands and walk? Hundreds of people die daily. And then what's the difference between them? Because they have become, from being protectors, they have become predators to Nigerians. So I'm not seeing any difference, because even the Boko Haram and the rest, they still work with these persons for intel. So even if it's for short term, we need people that come and do a short term fixing in certain areas, and afterwards let the military learn. At the same time, they need a complete audit in all areas of the military intervention or service chiefs in Nigeria. Be it from the personnel, their capacity, the operations they have been carrying, the finance, and all that. At the end of the day, they should purge out the system, punish erring persons or criminal elements in the system, so that we know that the few ones we have left are the ones willing to work for us, not the ones that be calling us bloody civilians consistently.
Thank you so much for that. But seeing that you are still in the spirit of Armed Forces Remembrance Day, I still feel that, well, despite the fact that things are not going the way people like in Nigeria, we still have to give thanks to our armed forces, because without them, I think that even these terrorists and bandits, they would have done way more damage than they're doing right now. But at least if they know that, okay, they have an opposition, it is still sort of keeping them in check. And because of this, we say many thanks to our armed forces in Nigeria, and for the ones who have departed in service, we thank you so much for the services you've rendered to the country. So now we have to move on to our next topic, because we are quickly running out of time, and that is menace of vandalism in Nigeria. But before we do that, let us quickly take this break on need for reorganizing anti-graft agency in Nigeria. When we come back, we'll be talking about the issues of vandalism, and we'll try to see a way out of this. So this is with us.
The Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, was established by an act of the National Assembly on 12th December 2002 by the administration of President Olusegun Obasanjo. The gazette was to combat corrupt practices and sanitize business transactions, not only in government-owned institutions, but the entire Nigerian society.
I think basically you need a person of integrity. If a man of integrity gets there, he doesn't want to steal, and he will not allow any other person to steal. And again, you know, system works itself at times. What do we have as a system? Because it's marks of absurdity that we kept gold, we kept jewelries with hunters, and it got missing.
If Nigeria want to get it right, as what's happening in other countries where, yes, the issue of corruption is concerned, how they go about fighting corruption, if you can use that fight, the government's not supposed to interfere in anything corruption, because if government
it's not an interesting thing at all that those that are saddled with fighting against corruption are now being probed for corrupt practices, to the extent that some were sacked and many suspended.
The Code of Conduct Tribunal try as much as they could to checkmate corruption in Nigeria. All of these bodies, especially EFCC, ICPC, they appear to have tried so much, but with little or nothing to show for all their efforts. And we will continue to labor under this kind of burden for as long as we do not know which body should serve as the primary body to ensure that corruption is checkmated.
Post in that sector is being appointed by the presidency, right? And we don't know their background. Some of them have some skeletons in their cupboard even before them entering into that post. Because the question asked me, that is also I have such. It has been also coming in my mind what they are using those billions of naira recovered to do. You can see them, that's we only hear it on pages of newspaper.
At this juncture, it's pertinent to do reorientation of anti-graft agencies in the country and modify the leadership and their internal working mechanism for efficiency, accountability, and fairness.
Glad to have you back. If you're just joining us, you've missed quite a lot, but don't worry, you can catch up with us on our Facebook and YouTube channel. We stream on both of these platforms. And now to the topic that we advertised, that is menace of vandalism in Nigeria. You see, whenever Nigerians want to point to a problem in the country, they are always pointing fingers at probably the federal government, state government, if you are lucky. Some other lighted ones might even point to the local government areas. But when we have issues of the citizens themselves destroying things that were done by the federal government to help Nigerians, recently in the Federal Capital Territory, we had issues of manhole covers being taken away. Most of our grid collapse that happened last year, most of them were attributed to vandalism. So this is something that we truly need to talk about. I'll be starting with Emmanuel Nicole. When it comes to the issue of vandalism in Nigeria, I know some people would point to the fact that it is still the federal government's fault because the citizens are hungry and that is why they are looking for other means of livelihood. But what are your thoughts on issues of vandalism? Is it still right for us to blame the government when it's the citizens themselves that is destroying what the government has done?
For me, I'll look at two angles to it. Even for every society to grow, there's what we call good leadership, and then we have good followership. And in trying to look at situations, to look at the roles each of these groups will play, our leaders on their own parts, places that are of use like that should have certain level of security. Because in Nigeria, at different levels, we have different security agencies manning and handling different things. At the same time, some of us have consistently advocated for a system that works for all Nigerians, no matter the name we call the system of government, and that is community policing. In a system where communities police their own environment, not the community policing we have been hearing, then a situation where communities among themselves form themselves, report intel, communicate intels within themselves, and report issues that of criminal issues happening within the society, and equally even arrest these criminals and hand them over to the authorities required. But at the same time, some of these persons, when you arrest them and hand over to these law enforcement officers, you still see them in the next day roaming around. It means they have been freed. But such communities most time expect that these persons will be prosecuted and being brought to book. But when you consistently, they arrest these persons, give to you, and you free them, then it goes back to the leadership, failure of leadership. And then I'll give example. We organized a Youth and Policing Summit in Northeast, and we have representatives from different states, and we're privileged to have even a judge in our midst. And he actually spoke to us and informed that in Yobe, for example, when the issue of Boko Haram started earlier, a lot of persons, the committee went and reported to different law enforcement officers of the presence of their own family members being part of the Boko Haram and the rest. They came and arrested those persons, and the following day, these persons were freed. And as they were freeing them, they were also privy to the information of who actually reported them. And what happened next? It was the police picking up dead bodies on every street because they knew who reported them and they went back. So you start looking at the protection of whistleblowers and all that in communities. So without the community, there won't be any need for any police. And for the policing agencies to succeed, there's also need for police community partnership, which has not been so. Anybody in the country knows the situation currently. Citizens do not trust law enforcement officers because of the way and manner they have treated citizens over some time now. So there's need for the security agencies to also learn to build the trust between them and citizens. At the same time, encourage situations where communities can police themselves and work with such communities. If they can do that to an extent, the community also learn that they have a role in policing, and then law enforcement officers too can be able to complement that role as expected. With that, we'll be able to have a better system that works, and then a system that if people vandalize things and all that, they can also be brought to book.
Thank you so much for that. Not to Yinka Ogunsoya, when this comes to issues of vandalism in Nigeria, would you say it's hunger in the land? Would you say it's probably greed from the people, or perhaps incompetence of the government?
Again, vandalism is a crime. Point blank. Let's not sugarcoat it. There is no excuse. There's no reason to do it. People do it because they're trying to take a shortcut. But there's some areas where we can fix things and make things work for everybody. Yes, there's hunger in the land. There's lack of production of food materials and stuff like that. That's fine. But for you to go and take a manhole cover that can kill multiple people knowingly to sell it to make money, that does not justify you just trying to find food. That means you just don't have humane thinking of other people in your heart, because you know you're endangering life. And for somebody to know that they're still in those manhole covers and accepting them to melt them down to make another product, that means they don't really care about the growth and welfare of the country as well. That's the way I see it. So what do? We need a massive shift in thinking, national pride, collective ownership. This is our role. This is our manhole. Everybody, like the last speaker spoke, it's got to a point that people are so not interested in collective activities anymore that people don't really take pride in when they see somebody committing vandalism and trying to stop them or trying to report them. So we have to go back to that. And one of the tactics we can use here is community policing. When you say community policing, it's not something that's going to happen overnight, because we tend to sensationalize things in our country. We love to snap our fingers and want to fix tomorrow. It's not going to work tomorrow. You have to go back to how are these police officers trained. I don't know if you remember the scandal at the police college about a few years ago. If you're training people in that horrendous condition and you're giving them live ammunition to go out there, I think you're not creating community policing officers. You're creating harsh individuals that just went through hazing and harassment. Now they're going to victimize people on the street. So every action, is going to result to some kind of response. So we need to reorientate our people. We need to also retrain our officers. They're actually working for the people. Community police, you want police officers who are familiar with the terrain, the areas where they're operating, so that people can have confidence in them, be able to tell them when they see something that's going wrong. And we're not separate that from people actually just calling police on their neighbors because they don't like them. So there's so many intricacies that's involved in vandalism. The federal government does have its own aspect, which is actually minimal in this situation. Because after providing this infrastructure that we asked for, that we really want, do you want to commit a whole bunch of money again to security? I've not seen in any country I've visited police monitoring manholes in the ground or the rail guards on the road. People just don't take it because they know it's ours. It's a collective property. It benefits everybody. It will endanger life. Do you give an excuse of hunger when somebody knowingly go to the rail line and take some metal, knowing the next train is coming with hundreds of people and they might be killed? That's criminal. But we have to have a massive campaign, just like we did with why, so that people can know there's consequences for this action, and also it has to be accompanied by economic relief, security relief. People have to go back to farming. People have to be able to go back on their business. Peace of mind. That's why I said security is being pushed to the side to some extent, but it's the number one catalyst for stabilizing the country and the economic well-being of the people.
Thank you so much for that. And now very quickly to Manuel Ekule, because we are fast running out of time. But let me just say we've even run out of time. When it comes to issues of getting Nigerians to actually take ownership of some of these public infrastructures that we have that is continually being vandalized, do you think it's still possible in Nigeria that we have people who are far removed from activities of governor? Because we have in Nigeria people generating their own electricity for their own water, transportation, and almost a lot of things that they would normally rely on government to provide for them. So do you think we might still get to that point in Nigeria where every